What's up everyone, and welcome to Jayconomics. My name is Jay and it's a pleasure to meet all of you. On this channel, we take a look at anything related to finance with a strong focus on investing. So if that sounds like something you want to be a part of, then please consider subscribing and liking this video to help me on my quest to befriend the big, bad YouTube algorithm. As promised in my last video, in this episode we'll be breaking down warrants. In part 1 of this video, we'll go through what warrants are, as well as their advantages and disadvantages. Part 2 will quickly cover why companies issue warrants. In part 3, we'll discuss SHLL's warrant terms and how we go about exercising them. In part 4, we'll go over what you should buy, warrants, common shares, or both. And finally, in part 5 of this video, I will reveal my position as well as what I plan on doing with SHLL. So if you're invested into Shell, currently own Shell warrants, or are thinking of purchasing some, this video is for you, and you're going to want to stay locked in until the end. So without further ado, let's get into the video. What are warrants? Well, warrants are basically long-term call options that allow investors to buy common shares at a fixed price until a specified future expiry date. Warrants trade well below the common share price, and so an investor has to put up significantly less capital upfront to own the warrant. Warrants are usually a lot more sensitive to price action as well. For example, if the common share were to rise 5%, the warrant would likely move up 10% or more. If you are bullish on a company and you think that their share price will significantly increase, then loading up on warrants could be a great play. On the flip side, warrants do carry more risk. For example, if the share price were to decrease by 5%, then the warrant would likely drop more than that. Most stock warrants provide the holder the right, but not the obligation, to buy common shares at the predetermined price. Selling your warrants as you do with options is also another option for warrant holders. One thing to note is that you should do your own due diligence and research into each company's warrant terms before buying. This is because though there are expiry dates for the warrant, some companies choose to force the warrant holder to exercise prior to the maturity date, if certain conditions are met. So make sure you know what these conditions are, if there are any. Warrants also have the risk of the company's stock never getting high enough to be in the money, which in simple terms basically means that if you were to redeem your warrants, you would have actually paid more for the warrants plus your specified share price than the current share price. Don't worry, we'll go through some examples later in the video. But for now, what's important to remember is that warrants allow you to essentially put a down payment on your stock and pay the remainder at a later date. But if you decide the stock isn't for you and it's looking like it's not worth the second payment, you could just cut your losses and run. But Jay, why do companies issue warrants? What's the point? Well, typically a warrant is issued by a company as an incentive to attract investors to invest into the company. This differentiates from options because when an investor purchases options, the company doesn't receive any money whatsoever. So by issuing warrants, the company is able to raise more capital. This comes in handy for both the company and the investor. In the case of the investor, for example, even if he or she lacks enough capital to build his or her desired position through the company's stock, that investor could go the warrant route to accomplish this. It's easier to convince shareholders to pay $10 per warrant than to purchase additional company shares at $30, for example. And as mentioned earlier in the video, you should use caution with warrants due to the quick gains or quick losses they can create. SHLL common stock trades under the symbol SHLL, and if you buy one SHLL, you have one share of common stock. The warrant symbol is SHLL-WS. If you have one SHLL-WS, you have one SHLL warrant that entitles you the right to exercise that for one whole share of common stock at the exercise price of $11.50. SHLL warrants are not yet exercisable and won't be until 30 days after the merge is finalized. So no, unfortunately you cannot buy SHLL warrants today and immediately convert them to shares to sell for profit. If you're still on the fence about Hyliion and SHLL, I'd suggest you check out my full in-depth Hyliion stock analysis video linked in the top right corner now. One thing to keep in mind is that until you exercise your warrant, you do not have a share of common stock. A unit, on the other hand, is a combination of a share and a fraction of a warrant. One unit is usually a combination of one share of common stock paired with either 1/3, 1/2, or one whole warrant used to entice early investors to buy into their SPAC. The fraction of a warrant or whole warrant is the additional incentive here. Remember also that only whole warrants can be exercised. If you are buying units of SHLL, which include one whole share and half of a redeemable warrant, you would want to purchase units in multiples of 2 to ensure that you would not have a fractional remainder of an unredeemable non-whole warrant when you exercise them for common stock. Okay, great. So now we know what warrants are, but how do we actually exercise them if we own them? You'll have to go through your broker. You would need to message them to ask them to do it for you. Then the process could take a few weeks to materialize. So keep in mind that if you choose to redeem your warrants for shares, the price of the stock could theoretically drop during that wait period. In terms of what you pay, in Hyliion's case, it would cost you $11.50 plus whatever you had paid for your warrant in the first place in order to receive one share of Hyliion, or HYLN. So knowing all of this, should you buy shell stock or shell warrants? So if we look at shell stock price and warrant prices at close on June 19th when the merger was announced, and we compare that to its current prices as of Monday, July 20th at close, the stock has returned 55.62%, whereas the warrant would have given you a 72.43% return. In my opinion, the best strategy for Shell and SPACs in general would be to buy the common shares before the announcement when it was around $10. This gives you limited downside in case the merger doesn't go through, since you still get $10 per share back, versus buying warrants which will expire worthless with no merger. Then, in this case, after the announcement when the stock price shot up from $10 to $14, you would sell the common shares and purchase warrants. You're playing with house money, giving yourself a more lucrative reward opportunity, and your risk is nullified. Now let's take a look at the current share and current warrant prices for Shell of $21.85 and $7.07 into consideration. Right now, if the merger for whatever reason is called off and the shares are liquidated at $10 apiece, shareholders would lose $11.85 per share. Meanwhile, even if you bought the same number of warrants at this current price of $7.07, you'd only lose that $7.07 per warrant if the whole thing got called off. So look at it this way. The cost of the stock is higher per share, and the potential returns on the warrants are better. However, if you're a believer in Hyliion, which I personally am, then this temporary fall will not matter. Let's recap why someone would want to buy warrants instead of common shares. Number 1. We pay less capital up front. Number 2. There is more profit potential. Number 3. It's a fantastic way to leverage your money if you really believe in a company. And lastly, generally they give you a longer time frame than regular options, so you get more flexibility. The beauty of investing is that there are usually multiple angles you can play. In the case of the SHLL Hyliion merger, for more advanced investors, we have the warrant stock arbitrage strategy. This play would involve going long on the warrant and shorting either through a put or selling a call the shell stock. Once the stock overinflates after the merger, the warrant price will rise with it, allowing you to profit if you bought the warrant early enough. Then, when the stock falls and finds some steadiness, you could profit off of your short as well. Overall, it's a more lucrative play on the future company and a short on the current speculation. As I shared with you in my last Hyliion in-depth analysis video, I now currently own 207 warrants of Shell and 40 shares, and will be looking to add more prior to the merger. My plan is to sell my shares once I triple my investment, and I will be keeping my warrants as a long-term hold, as I really do love Hylion's mission and potential. All things considered, there are many ways to profit off of shllstock right now, whether you are a long-term investor or a trader. I hope that this video simplified things enough and gave you some insight into warrants. My hope is that you will be able to make an educated investing decision for yourself because, as we all know, knowledge is power. And if this video did bring you some value, then please don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on that notification bell for more videos like this. Keep in mind that I am not a financial advisor and this video is not meant to be financial advice, but I am simply sharing my thoughts on the matter. Never invest blindly and always do your own due diligence into whatever company you're investing into. And that wraps it up for today's episode. Thank you all for watching until the end, and let's grow this community together. Until next time, take care and invest smart.